course, Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging, DEIB at the workplace, based on South African context and legislation tailored for ECIC staff. Course Introduction. In South Africa's diverse society, workplaces are enriched by different cultures, languages, genders, ages, and abilities. However, history, inequality, and unconscious bias can still create barriers. This course helps EC employees understand and apply diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, DEIB, in line with South African labor laws and ECIC values. The course connects legal obligations, Employment Equity Act, BBE, Constitution of South Africa, Labor Relations Act, etc., with practical tools to ensure ECIC is a workplace where all employees feel valued, respected, and able to thrive. Welcome to Module 1. Understanding Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging at ECIC. This is our starting point in the DEIB journey. Before we can apply policies or track progress, it's important that we build a shared understanding of what these terms actually mean and why they matter in our workplace. At its core, DEIB isn't just a set of buzzwords. It's about creating a work environment where everyone feels seen, treated fairly, included in decision-making, and connected to a culture of belonging. For ECIC, this isn't only about strengthening internal teamwork. It also shapes how we serve clients, interact with stakeholders, and build a reputation for integrity in South Africa's financial sector. We'll also explore how South African law guides us. Laws like the Constitution, the Employment Equity Act, and BBBEE aren't just abstract rules. They're practical guardrails that shape the way organizations like ECC hire, promote, and engage with employees and partners. Think of this session as laying the foundation. By the end of Module 1, you'll not only know the definitions of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, but also understand how these principles apply directly to your daily work here at ECIC. Purpose. The purpose of this module is simple: to build awareness of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, what we call DEIB. At ECIC, awareness is the first step. We can't act on what we don't understand. So in this module, we'll connect DEIB directly to three things that matter for us every day. First, our legal duties. South African laws like the Employment Equity Act and BBBEE don't just sit on a shelf. They require us to actively promote fairness in hiring, promotions, training, and even supplier choices. For example, when ECIC submits diversity reports to the Department of Labor, that's a legal responsibility, but it also signals accountability. Second, our ethical standards. As a state-owned financial institution, we're held to the highest standards of governance and integrity. Treating people fairly isn't just compliance. It's about living up to our values of respect, transparency, and accountability. If an employee feels excluded or undervalued, that's not just a personal issue. It becomes an ethical concern for the whole organization. And third, the culture we want to strengthen inside our teams. Policies and laws are important, but culture is what people feel every day at work. Culture shows up in small things: who gets invited to speak in meetings, how feedback is shared, and whether people feel safe to bring their whole selves to work. A strong, inclusive culture makes teams more innovative, resilient, and engaged. So the purpose of this module is not only to help you know the law, but also to help you see how DEIB connects directly to the way we work together at ECIC. Learning outcomes. By the end of this session, you'll walk away with 4 key abilities. First, you'll be able to explain what diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging really mean. These aren't just HR terms, they are practical tools. Diversity is about recognizing our differences. Equity is about ensuring fairness, especially where historical disadvantages exist. Inclusion is about active participation, and belonging is about creating a workplace where everyone feels valued. Being able to explain these concepts clearly means you'll also know how to spot them or notice when they're missing in daily work. Second, you'll understand why DEIB is critical for ECC's success. This isn't only about compliance, it's about performance. Research consistently shows that diverse teams make better decisions and are more innovative. For ECIC, this translates into stronger governance, better financial services, and more trust from me. Core concept: diversity. Diversity is about recognizing and valuing all the ways people differ, both visible and invisible. Visible differences are often the first we notice, such as race, gender, age, culture, disability, or language. But diversity goes further. It also includes differences in thinking styles, education, work experience, religion, personality, or even problem-solving approaches. These invisible layers often shape how people see the world and contribute to a team. In South Africa, diversity has a particularly deep meaning. We are a country shaped by history, where issues of race, gender, and opportunity have had lasting effects. Embracing diversity at work is not just about compliance with the law, it's about healing, growth, and ensuring that everyone has a seat at the table. At ECIC, a practical example of diversity in action can be seen in our project teams. Imagine a team working on a new risk management process. We bring together colleagues from finance, compliance, IT, and risk. Each department sees challenges differently. IT may focus on systems, finance on budgets, compliance on regulations, and risk on potential exposures. When these perspectives come together, solutions are not only more innovative, but also more complete. That's the power of diversity. It makes us stronger, more adaptable, and better prepared to serve our stakeholders. Core concept, equity. Equity is about fairness, and fairness does not always mean treating everyone in exactly the same way. Think of it this way. If two employees need to reach a window, and one is standing while the other is seated in a wheelchair, giving them both the same stool doesn't help. Equity recognizes the different starting points people have and provides the right support so that everyone can reach the same opportunities. In South Africa, equity is especially important because of our history of inequality. The Employment Equity Act and BBBEE framework were created to address systemic disadvantages that still affect many groups today. Without equity, diversity becomes a box-ticking exercise, but with equity, it becomes real change. At ECIC, equity plays out in practical ways. It might mean making reasonable accommodations, such as providing accessible software for visually impaired staff, or ensuring our offices are disability-friendly. It can also mean investing in leadership programs for women in departments where representation is still low, or mentoring young Black professionals to close gaps in experience and opportunity. Equity is not about lowering standards. It's about removing barriers so everyone has a fair chance to meet those standards and thrive. By focusing on equity, EC ensures that core concept, inclusion. Inclusion is where diversity and equity come to life. It's about action, the policies, behaviors, and daily practices that make sure everyone can participate fully, not just a select few. While diversity is about who's in the room, and equity is about making the playing field fair, inclusion is about ensuring everyone's voice is actually heard and respected. Without inclusion, diversity is just numbers on a page. At ECIC, inclusion shows up in simple but powerful ways. Take a team meeting, for example. If only the most senior or outspoken colleagues are heard, others might hold back valuable ideas. But when supervisors deliberately invite input from quieter team members or junior staff, it signals that every perspective matters. That one action can unlock fresh solutions and build confidence across the team. Inclusion also extends beyond meetings. It includes how tasks are assigned, how feedback is given, and how recognition is shared. For instance, if opportunities to lead projects are only given to the same group repeatedly, others may feel excluded. By rotating responsibilities, supervisors create fair chances for all employees to grow and contribute. In the South African context, inclusion also means being sensitive to cultural and language diversity. Something as simple as greeting colleagues in more than one language or acknowledging different cultural holidays can make people feel seen and respected. So inclusion is not passive. It's a daily choice to act in ways that welcome, involve, and value every single employee. Core concept, belonging. Belonging is the emotional outcome of diversity, equity, and inclusion working together. It's not about policies or metrics, it's about how people feel at work. Belonging means you feel valued, respected, and accepted for who you are, without needing to hide parts of yourself to fit in. It's that quiet confidence of knowing, I matter here. At ECIC, belonging is the difference between someone who just comes in, does their tasks, and leaves, and someone who feels connected, motivated, and committed to our shared purpose. When people feel they belong, they're more likely to share ideas, raise concerns early, and give their best effort. A simple example is Heritage Month celebrations. If every employee feels safe and proud to share their culture, whether that's wearing traditional dress, speaking about family traditions, or even bringing cultural foods to the office, that's belonging in action. It's not just ticking the box of Diversity Day. It's about creating an environment where people genuinely feel that their identity is welcomed and celebrated. Belonging also shows up in smaller, everyday ways. An employee with a disability feeling that their needs are naturally accommodated without fuss. A junior staff member knowing their contribution will be acknowledged, not dismissed. A parent feeling comfortable balancing family responsibilities with work without being judged. In South Africa, with our history of exclusion and inequality, building belonging is more than a nice to have. It's a statement that says, every single person at ECIC deserves to feel at home here. That's the heart of DEIB, creating not just a compliant workplace, but a truly human one where everyone belongs. Legal Framework Overview. In South Africa, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging are not just good practice, they are a legal requirement. Our country's history of inequality means that legislation plays a critical role in reshaping workplaces, and every organization, including ECIC, is accountable. Several key laws guide us. The Constitution of South Africa, specifically Section 9, is the foundation. It enshrines the principle of equality and prohibits unfair discrimination of any kind. This sets the tone for all other legislation. The Employment Equity Act, EEA, ensures that workplaces actively remove barriers to equal opportunity. It requires employers to take affirmative action and to report on progress. For ECIC, this means monitoring representation targets and showing evidence that we are improving diversity across all levels of the organization. Broad-based Black Economic Empowerment, BBBE, goes further by promoting economic equity. It affects not just hiring, but also how we engage suppliers, invest in training, and develop Black talent. For example, ECIC's procurement strategy must align with BBBE codes. The Labor Relations Act, LRA, protects employees from unfair discrimination and harassment and provides structured ways to resolve disputes, such as through the CCMA. This ensures fairness and accountability in conflict resolution. And finally, the Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act, PEPU, often called the Equality Act, extends protection beyond the workplace. It reminds us that we are part of a broader South African society and must play a role in tackling systemic exclusion. Together, these laws are not optional, they are binding. For ECIC, compliance is not only about avoiding penalties, it's about living up to our role as a responsible public institution, setting an example of fairness and inclusion in practice. So when we talk about DEIB, we're not just talking about values, we're talking about legal duties that shape our daily decisions, our HR policies, and even how we engage with clients and communities. Constitution, S9. The South African Constitution is the highest law of the land, and at the heart of it lies Section 9, the Equality Clause. This clause sets out a simple but powerful principle. Everyone is equal before the law and has the right to equal protection and benefit of the law. It also makes it clear that unfair discrimination on grounds such as race, gender, sex, pregnancy, marital status, ethnic or social origin, color, sexual orientation, age, disability, religion, conscience, belief, culture, language, and birth is prohibited. What makes Section 9 especially important is that it doesn't only forbid discrimination, it also allows for affirmative action measures to correct past imbalances. In other words, it recognizes that equality is not achieved by treating everyone the same, but by actively removing barriers that have kept certain groups at a disadvantage. For ECIC, the Equality Clause is more than a legal text. It's a guiding principle for every decision we make. In recruitment, it means ensuring job adverts, shortlisting, and interviews are fair and free of bias. In promotions, it means decisions are based on merit, but also mindful of equity targets that reflect South Africa's diversity. In day-to-day interactions, it means treating colleagues with dignity, regardless of background or personal characteristics. A practical example, if two employees apply for the same development program, and one has historically had fewer opportunities due to systemic barriers, Section 9 supports measures that give that person a fair chance to grow. By aligning our actions with the Constitution, ECIC not only meets its legal obligations, but also demonstrates its commitment to fairness, integrity, and transformation. Employment Equity Act, EEA. The Employment Equity Act, or EEA, is central to workplace transformation in South Africa. It was designed to address the legacy of inequality by ensuring that workplaces are fair, representative, and inclusive. The Act has two main responsibilities for employers. First, removing unfair discrimination. This means that no employee or applicant should be treated less favorably because of race, gender, disability, age, religion, or any other protected ground. For ECICE, this translates into reviewing HR practices, from job adverts to salary structures, to ensure they are free of bias. Second, implementing affirmative action measures. The EEA recognizes that equality won't happen on its own. Employers must actively take steps to improve representation of historically disadvantaged groups. This is not about lowering standards, but about leveling the playing field so everyone has a fair chance. At ECIC, these responsibilities take very practical forms. Setting diversity targets. For example, aiming to increase the number of women and Black professionals in senior management roles. Annual reporting to the Department of Labor, submitting detailed workforce profiles, progress reports, and equity plans that show where we are meeting targets and where gaps remain. Tracking representation across different levels of the organization, ensuring that equity is visible not only at entry level, but also in leadership and decision-making positions. A real-world example might be a recruitment round for executive positions. Under the EEA, ECIC must not only recruit fairly, but also consider whether its leadership team reflects the diversity of the country. If it doesn't, affirmative action measures, such as targeted development programs or inclusive recruitment strategies, must be applied. The EEA is therefore not a one-off compliance exercise. It's an ongoing process of review, reporting, and improvement. For ECIC, it's about embedding fairness in every layer of the organization, while also being accountable to national transformation goals. Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment, BBBE. The Broad-Based Black Economic Empowerment Act, or BBBE, goes further than internal employment equity. It's about reshaping South Africa's economy to make it fairer and more inclusive. While the Employment Equity Act focuses mainly on staff representation, BBBE extends to how organizations do business. It asks, who do you partner with? Who do you buy from? Who do you train and develop? At its core, BBBEE is measured through a scorecard with several key elements. Ownership, who owns and controls the company? Management control, who sits at senior and executive levels? Skills development, how much is invested in training Black employees and young graduates? Enterprise and supplier development, whether you work with Black-owned and small businesses to strengthen the economy. Socioeconomic development, contributions to broader community upliftment. For ECIC, compliance with BBEE is both a legal obligation and a competitive necessity. It means partnering with diverse suppliers, not just established ones, so that smaller Black-owned firms also benefit from business opportunities. It means investing in training and mentorship programs that build Black professionals' skills, leadership capacity, and long-term career growth. It also means aligning procurement and project management decisions with transformation goals. A practical example, when ESEC awards a major IT contract, it cannot simply look at cost. It must also consider whether the supplier contributes to transformation. Choosing a supplier that is Black-owned or that invests heavily in skills development can strengthen ESEC's BBEE score and compliance. But beyond compliance, there's a bigger picture. BBEE helps ESEC live up to its role as a public entity that supports national development. By making deliberate business choices, ECIC contributes to reducing inequality and building a stronger, more representative economy. So BBBE isn't only about ticking a box. It's about reshaping opportunity in South Africa and ensuring that our business decisions contribute to fairness and growth across society. Labor Relations Act, LRA. The Labor Relations Act, or LRA, is one of the cornerstones of workplace protection in South Africa. Its purpose is to create fairness and balance in the relationship between employers and employees. The Act does two very important things for us. First, it protects employees against unfair treatment and harassment. This means that no one should be discriminated against, intimidated, or treated unfairly because of who they are or because they raised a concern. It also means that disciplinary and grievance processes must be conducted with transparency and fairness. Second, it provides a clear process for resolving disputes. The LRA established the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation, and Arbitration, the CCMA. This gives employees and employers a neutral, independent place to resolve workplace conflicts. Whether it's an unfair dismissal, discrimination, or harassment complaint, the CCMA provides a structured way to handle the issue without bias. At ECIC, this translates into several everyday practices, ensuring that all disciplinary hearings are handled fairly, with the right to representation and appeal, providing employees with access to formal grievance procedures if they feel mistreated, encouraging resolution at the lowest possible level, but ensuring the CCMA is always available if fairness cannot be reached internally. For example, if an employee feels they were unfairly overlooked for promotion and believes bias was at play, the LRA ensures they have a process, first through ECI's HR and grievance channels, and ultimately through the CCMA if needed. The LRA is more than a legal framework. It is a safeguard of dignity and fairness. For ECIC, it reinforces the principle that trust is built when employees know that their rights are respected and that they have access to impartial remedies if things go wrong. PEPUDA, Equality Act. The Promotion of Equality and Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act, better known as PEPUDA or the Equality Act, is one of South Africa's most powerful tools for building an inclusive society. While the Employment Equity Act and Labor Relations Act focus mainly on the workplace, PEPUDA takes a broader view. It says fairness and equality must apply in all areas of life: education, housing, service delivery, business practices, and community life. For organizations like ECIC, this is an important reminder. We are not just a workplace. We are part of South Africa's wider community. That means our culture, our decisions, and even our external partnerships must reflect inclusivity and respect. In practice, PEPUDA requires us to go beyond the minimum. It pushes us to ask questions like, are our policies free from systemic exclusion? Are we making our services accessible to people with disabilities? Are we addressing language barriers so that clients and stakeholders feel included? At ECIC, this could mean ensuring that our communications are available in plain language, not just in legal or financial jargon. It might mean making sure our premises and online platforms are accessible to people with physical or sensory disabilities. It could also mean reviewing procurement practices to ensure we are not unintentionally excluding smaller Black-owned businesses. A simple example: if ECIC hosts a community outreach session and provides materials only in English, some stakeholders may feel excluded. But by offering translations into isiZulu, Sesotho, or Tshivenda, we align with the spirit of PEPUDA, ensuring equal access and participation. The Equality Act reminds us that DIB is not only about compliance inside the office walls. It's about how we as EC show up in South Africa as a whole, modeling fairness, inclusion, and respect in every interaction with employees, clients, and the public. Business case for DEIB at ECIC. While laws like the Constitution, the Employment Equity Act, and BBBEE require us to act, the real power of DEIB goes beyond compliance. For ECIC, it is a strategic advantage. Let's break this down. First, DEIB strengthens governance and reputation. As a state-owned financial institution, ECIC is under constant public and regulatory scrutiny. When we reflect diversity in our leadership, ensure equity in our policies, and foster inclusive decision-making, we demonstrate accountability and integrity. This strengthens our reputation as a responsible institution that lives its values. Second, DEIB improves innovation and decision-making. Diverse teams bring diverse perspectives. A group made up of people from different backgrounds, disciplines, and experiences will see risks and opportunities that a homogeneous group might miss. For example, when ECIC designs new insurance products, having input from professionals across finance, compliance, IT, and client service ensures that the product is not only technically sound, but also practical for South Africa's diverse market. Third, DEIB builds trust with clients and stakeholders. Our clients and partners want to see themselves represented in the people they deal with. When ECIC teams reflect South Africa's diversity, it signals that we understand their realities. This trust leads to stronger relationships and a broader client base. Finally, DEIB supports our responsibilities under the PFMA, the Public Finance Management Act. This act requires us to manage resources responsibly and fairly. A workplace culture that values inclusion and belonging reduces conflict, increases employee engagement, and makes ECIC more effective in delivering on its mandate. A practical example: imagine eSeek is developing a new product for small business owners. If the development team includes only senior staff with corporate backgrounds, the product may overlook challenges faced by entrepreneurs in rural areas. But if the team includes voices from diverse communities, the solution will be more relevant, inclusive, and successful in the market. So, the business case is clear. DEIB is not just the right thing to do legally or ethically. It is a driver of performance, resilience, and long-term success for ECIC. Barriers to inclusion. While DE creates opportunity, we also need to be honest about the barriers that can get in the way. These challenges don't always come from bad intentions. Often they are subtle, unconscious, or built into old systems. The first barrier is unconscious bias and stereotypes. We all carry hidden assumptions about people. For example, thinking younger employees are automatically more tech-savvy, or assuming women with families are less committed to their careers. These biases, even when unspoken, can influence who gets opportunities or recognition. At ECIC, awareness training helps us challenge these assumptions and make decisions based on merit, not stereotypes. The second barrier is language and cultural misunderstandings. South Africa is home to 11 official languages and many cultures. Sometimes communication styles differ. What one person sees as direct might feel rude to another. A joke that feels harmless in one culture may be offensive in another. At ECIC, we overcome this by being mindful, respectful, and using plain, inclusive language wherever possible. The third barrier is limited accessibility for persons with disabilities. Even with the best intentions, workplaces often overlook accessibility. For example, an online platform may not be screen reader friendly, or meeting rooms may not accommodate wheelchair users. At ECIC, equity means making adjustments, whether through technology, physical access, or flexible policies, so that no one is left behind. The fourth barrier is the gender pay gap and unequal promotional opportunities. Across many sectors in South Africa, women and other underrepresented groups still earn less or face slower career progression than their peers. At ECIC, addressing this means reviewing pay structures, ensuring transparent promotion processes, and mentoring talent to close these gaps. These barriers remind us that DEIB is not just a one-time project. It's ongoing work that requires us to notice, challenge, and change practices that exclude people. By addressing these barriers directly, ECIC can create a workplace where fairness and belonging are more than ideals. They become daily reality. Module Summary. We've now reached the end of Module 1, Understanding Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. Let's recap the key takeaways. First, DEIB is about 4 connected ideas. Diversity is the mix, all the visible and invisible differences between people. Equity is fairness, recognizing that some groups need extra support to level the playing field. Inclusion is action, the behaviors and policies that make sure everyone can participate fully. Belonging is the outcome, the feeling of being valued, safe, and respected for who you are. Second, DEIB is guided by South African law. The Constitution, Employment Equity Act, BBBE Act, Labor Relations Act, and PUTA all require us to create a fair and inclusive workplace. For ECIC, these aren't optional. They shape how we recruit, promote, manage, and do business. Third, DEIB strengthens East culture and performance. It's not just about compliance. It makes us better at governance, improves innovation, and builds trust with clients and stakeholders. A diverse team that works inclusively will always outperform one that ignores difference. Finally, we must recognize and address barriers. Unconscious bias, language gaps, inaccessibility, and unequal opportunities can undermine our efforts if we ignore them. That's why DEIB requires deliberate daily attention. So here's the big picture. DEIB is not just a policy. It's a mindset and a commitment. When each of us practices fairness, respect, and inclusion, we help ECIC live up to its values and its mandate as a responsible South African institution. This module gave us the foundation. In Module 2, we'll move from concepts to practice, exploring the concrete actions we can take every day to make DEIB a lived reality at ECIC.